question and answer session as part of the active public hearing open house, or PHOH, for the proposed I-285 Top End Express Lanes project covering Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb counties. This I-285 proposed project will improve travel times and reliability, as well as enhance regional connectivity between I-75 and I-85. I'm Kyle Collins of Georgia DOT Communications, and I'll be your moderator for this evening's event. So on behalf of Georgia DOT and the entire project team, thanks for joining us. This virtual presentation and question and answer session is specific to the proposed I-285 Top End Express Lanes project, project number 0001758. The purpose is sharing key details about the latest design concept and draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, for the project. Please keep in mind that this is a preliminary design concept, so it's not yet final. All the materials that you see here are subject to change. One of the big ways you can make your voice heard is by submitting comments about the proposed Express Lanes project. We'll explain all the ways you can do that in a minute. But first, let's go over some tips for navigating this live virtual event. So today's virtual event is designed to give the public the opportunity to learn more about the I-285 Top End Express Lanes project and ask questions directly of the project team. For the best experience, make sure you have a reliable Wi-Fi or wired connection. But if you get disconnected, don't worry, you can always log back into the session. Closed captioning is available in multiple languages. To turn on that feature, simply navigate to the top of your screen, click the Captions button, and captioning will open up at the bottom of your screen. Click on that gear icon to choose your preferred language. So while we're on the language topic, we understand there's a sizable Spanish-speaking population on the I-285 Top End project area. So for that reason, we have a Spanish translator here to help facilitate the meeting. So if you're more comfortable asking questions in Spanish, follow the instructions on this slide to submit your questions. Our translator is standing by to consult with our project subject matter experts and then provide answers in Spanish within the Q&A feature in Microsoft Teams Town Hall. So after we review more virtual event tips, we're going to start with a pre-recorded presentation from GDOT's P3 project manager, Xavier James. After Xavier's presentation, we'll get to the important question and answer session. To submit a question or comment, click on the Q&A button at the top of your screen. This is going to open up a text box that you can type your question or comment. When you're finished, click the send button. You can begin submitting now or at any time during our session using the Microsoft Teams Town Hall Q&A feature. Please note that questions will not be visible until published by our moderator. To make this a successful event, we have a few key ground rules to cover. This is going to ensure that we maximize your time and answer as many questions as possible, accurately and thoughtfully. As an audience member, you're going to be in listen-only mode throughout this entire event. All questions and comments must be submitted through the Q&A feature. Today's session is also going to be recorded, and questions and comments will become part of the public record. Please keep questions concise, appropriate, and specific to this project, which is the I-285 Top End Express Lanes. The project team may group similar questions together, and we're not going to repeat questions and answers until we have been through all questions. If we don't get to your question today, or that question involves a more detailed technical type response, don't worry. We'll do our best to respond within 24 to 48 hours, but the only way we can do that is if we have your contact information. So be sure to leave that in the chat so that we can follow up with you if needed after this session. And lastly, if we have any public officials joining us today, please make sure you send us your name and office in the chat for our records. So at this time, we're going to kick it to GDOT Project Manager, Xavier James. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Xavier James, Georgia DOT Project Manager for the P3 Division. I am glad that you can join us today to learn more about the proposed I-285 Top End Express Lane project, PI number 0001758. Let's get started with today's presentation ahead of our virtual question and answer session. First, the northern half of the I-285 is one of the most heavily traveled and congested interstate highways in the United States. More than 240,000 vehicles travel across this stretch of highway every weekday. The proposed I-285 Top End Express Lane project is part of a larger effort to improve traffic flow and provide reliable trip times on our Metro Atlanta interstates. Instead of continuing to build general purpose lanes that will continue to fill up with vehicles, the Atlanta Regional Commission and our State Transportation Board adopted express lanes as a solution to manage congestion in Metro Atlanta and to provide reliable trip times as more people and businesses move to the region. Express lanes are optional price managed lanes that complement the existing interstate in some of the most congested corridors around Metro Atlanta. You don't have to use them, but motorists and transit customers can take advantage of the lanes to bypass congestion for a free flowing trip. And that's right, I said it, transit customers. Georgia Express lanes are considered transit lanes, supporting opportunities for existing transit services and inclusion of new transit opportunities along I-285 corridor. Express Lane Transit, or ELT, allows public transit providers that operate in these corridors, including Express, MARTA, and state-registered van pools, to use the express lanes free of charge. Transit and registered van pool riders will only need to pay their standard transit rider fee. The proposed express lanes on I-285 are a mobility choice and expected to improve regional mobility, provide more reliable trip times for motorists, while also increasing on-time transit performance and accessibility. Identified in 2016, the Ambitious Major Mobility Investment Program, or MMIP, is the first of its kind in the country and was developed to improve quality of life and build a better Georgia by creating additional capacity, improving freight movement, providing operational improvement and efficiencies, enhancing safety, and offering more reliable trip times. Within the MMIP portfolio are the addition of express lanes or managed lanes on State Route 400 and along the northern half of I-285 corridor. The I-285 Top-End Express Lane project proposes to add two new barrier-separated express lanes along I-285 between South Atlanta Road and Henderson Road, as well as on State Route 400 from South Glen Ridge Connector to the vicinity of North Springs MARTA Station. The proposed project spans three counties, Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb, crosses several cities, including Smyrna, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Chamblee, Doraville, and Tucker. The Express Lane project will be part of a larger Express Lane network. Motorists will be able to access Express Lane facilities at dedicated interchanges and direct merge locations. The proposed access points can be seen on the illustrated map on your screen. Locations of the access points are subject to change. You may be wondering, how are these express lanes going to be built? Based on the latest project design or preferred alternative, majority of the project will be elevated to minimize impact to adjacent properties. Some sections of the proposed project will also be at grade. As you can see, areas of the project that have elevated lanes would extend above and alongside existing general purpose lanes on I-285. The project team studied a range of alternatives and design options to determine which alternative best addresses the mobility needs for the proposed project. We encourage you to scan the QR code or visit the project website to view the latest concept design layouts, which provide an area view of the project limits for the project's preferred alternative. As considered in the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, the DEIS document offers an in-depth description of each alternative within the range of alternatives, including the no-bill alternative, the preferred alternative, and other alternatives that were considered. As mentioned earlier, the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane is part of the MMIP portfolio and will be part of the Georgia Express Lanes network. However, express lanes on I-285 were being considered before the MMIP was announced as part of the Georgia DOT's Revive 285 initiative. Over the years, GDOT and its project team has engaged with local stakeholders and the public to demonstrate and showcase the proposed express lane project. The project team hosted a community conversation meeting series in 2019, followed by the Public Information Open House series in 2020, conducted insights sessions with local stakeholders, community partners, and businesses, issued surveys for the project team, and have responded to meetings, requests, and public inquiries. As you can see on the project milestone timeline, the proposed project is now hosting an official public comment period as part of the Public Hearing Open House Series, or PHOH. This is your opportunity to review and provide your feedback that may be considered and will be incorporated in the official project records. We encourage you to submit comments on the updated concept design, DEIS document, mitigation plan. Following the close of the PHOH comment period, the project team will update the EIS document describing the project's potential environmental impact and include your comments and feedback in the EIS for final submittal. A record of decision or ROD is the final step to the EIS process and will be issued by FHWA announcing the selected alternative informed by public and agency input. Georgia DOT anticipate final EIS and ROD from FHWA in late 2025. Please keep in mind this date is subject to change. And that concludes our presentation overview for the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project. If you haven't already, we encourage you to visit the virtual meeting room platform on the project's website where you can review the following project information: latest concept, display, or preferred alternative, DEIS document, and proposed mitigation plan. Once you have viewed project materials, remember to submit comments on the proposed project. Your feedback and questions must be submitted by July 29, 2024. In addition to the virtual question and answer session, we will also be offering multiple in-person public hearing open house events. If you have any family, friends, or neighbors who are not able to join us today, we hope you tell them to stop by one of our in-person events. All the information available on the project website and presented in the virtual meeting rooms will be presented at the in-person open house events. Again, we hope you will review the DEIS mitigation plan and the updated concept design. If you have any questions, our panel of subject matter experts are available to answer. Once your question has been answered, please take a moment to submit your feedback on the proposed project via our online comment card, email, calling the project hotline, or by mailing your comments to the Georgia DOT offices. Now, I will hand it off to my colleague and the host for today's event, Kyle Collins. Thank you again for joining our virtual presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you during our question and answer session in just a few minutes.
Appreciate it, Xavier. So as you can see, there is a lot of good material available for review and comment on the 285 virtual meeting room. So to accommodate this, we dedicated a website, just like we talked about, the VMR Virtual Meeting Room Hub, showcasing the latest project design, draft environmental impact statement, and a lot more. So in this virtual meeting room, you're going to be able to access all the same information available at in-person open house events organized into informational stations. So when you first enter the virtual meeting room space, you're going to be greeted by Natalie Dale, who's Georgia DOT statewide spokesperson. She's going to welcome you into that space. Natalie provides a great overview of the virtual meeting platform and how best to navigate things. So definitely consider starting there. From there, you can click on each station at the top of the screen for an in-depth look at the project details, including a station where you can submit your comments. So this comment station is going to provide two methods for submitting comments to the end of the comment period, which wraps up Monday, July 29th. You can also send an email, leave a voicemail, or mail in your feedback by using the contact information shown on the slide here. In addition to this virtual session, Georgia DOT is hosting several in-person PHOH meetings. We actually had our first one yesterday evening in Doraville that went very well. You can see the times and dates for these meetings on your screen. During those open house sessions, you're going to be able to view the preliminary concept displays, project information, and ask questions of all our dedicated subject matter experts, and most importantly, leave your comments. Project materials can also be viewed in person through July 29th by visiting the Georgia DOT District 7 Metro office located at 5025 New Peachtree Road in Chamblee. If you need any accommodations or require materials in an accessible format, please contact the District Planning and Programming Coordinator for GDOT District 7, which is Joshua Higgins. And you can get to Joshua at 770-216-3896. Georgia DOT encourages comments on any aspect of this I-285 Top End Express Lanes project. That robust feedback during the previously held public information open house and now this public hearing open house series ensures that decisions are made in consideration of and to the benefit of you, the public, our customers' needs and preferences. So back to tips for the question and answer session. So we're going to go over a few to make sure you can navigate this live virtual event and ensure that it is valuable and a successful evening for everyone participating. Closed captioning is available in multiple languages. To turn on the closed captioning feature, navigate to the settings at the top of your screen. You're going to remain in listen-only mode and will stay muted during this event, but questions can be submitted at any time. This session is going to be recorded and questions and comments will become part of the public record. Make sure you keep questions concise, appropriate, and specific to this project. Project team may group similar questions together. If we don't get to your question tonight, don't worry about it. Especially if it involves a more detailed technical type response, we'll do our best to respond within 24 to 48 hours. But the only way we can do that is if you leave your name and contact information in the chat. Can't do that if you stay anonymous. And lastly, if we have any public officials joining us, make sure you send us your name and office in the chat for our records. So now we're going to transition to the Q&A portion of this event. We have a dedicated team of subject matter experts on hand to answer all your questions and many more staffers working behind the scenes to ensure this process goes smoothly. So we have experts in air and noise, right-of-way, project design, environmental, and project finance disciplines on this session prepared to inform the public. Many of these folks will also be at the various in-person events in the coming days as well that we referenced earlier. So as I mentioned earlier, this proposed project would bring 2 express lanes to the top end of I-285 spanning a roughly 20-mile area. The project would start at South Atlanta Road near I-75 and extend all the way through the top end past 85 near Henderson Road, as well as roughly 3 miles on State Route 400 from just south of the Glen Ridge Connector to the vicinity of the North Springs MARTA station. What you're seeing here on the screen is a project visual rendering giving you, our citizens, the opportunity to imagine what this could look like and how traffic would flow once construction is complete. You can view this video in its entirety at your leisure on the project website to specifically focus on your area of interest and kind of track what your commute would be with the new concept and if these lanes were built. So please keep in mind that this is still a preliminary design concept. It's not yet final. So all materials you see here are going to be subject to change. Okay, so as we start to have a few questions trickle in, I'm going to tag our air and noise expert first with GDOT, Miles Kemp, on a common interstate project concern. Miles, we're talking about noise barriers and what, if any, impact this project would have. I believe there's 30 some odd locations that may see some activity on noise mitigation. Could you kind of just take us through that process and maybe tour us around that virtual meeting room space as well?
Certainly, Kyle. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Miles Kemp, the Air and Noise Section Manager with the Georgia Department of Transportation. First off, I'd like to kind of take a little bit of time to talk about the process for completing noise assessments for projects such as the I-285 Top End Express Lanes project. So as part of the environmental studies that were completed for this project, a traffic noise analysis or a noise impact assessment was conducted to determine the acoustic impact of the proposed project for noise-sensitive resources, such as single-family or multifamily residences, as well as public outdoor spaces all along the project corridor. Following the completion of this traffic noise analysis, all areas projected to experience future traffic noise impacts associated with the project's construction were then assessed to determine if various forms of noise abatement, such as noise barriers, would be effective and constructible mitigation measures for each of these impacted sites. So generally concerning the findings of our noise abatement analyses, we have 14 existing noise barrier locations along the project corridor that are expected to initially require the removal of those existing walls to allow for construction of the project, followed by the subsequent replacement of those removed barriers in approximately the same locations. Additionally, there are 13 other existing barriers along the corridor that would remain at their current locations and would otherwise remain undisturbed, though there is one such location where we expect to extend the existing barrier. Finally, we have 15 locations along the project where additional noise abatement, such as noise barriers, are currently being considered, with each of those locations and their noise barriers being considered likely but not guaranteed. So in that regard, please do note that the noise assessment results are currently based on preliminary design information. And so those findings that we are presenting for the project are subject to future refinement and reevaluation if any design changes trigger the need for reassessment. So again, take some of those locations with that in mind. So with that being said, we can take a look at the virtual meeting room and a couple of the items or tools that we've generated for the project, such as the I-285 top end noise tool. And the way a lot of this works is that you might see in the top right corner an ability to type in your address. So if you're within the project study area along the corridor, you can generally type in your address. You'll see it drop down. You can generally click on that, and it should take you about to the area where your property or where that address is located. Along with that, you'll notice that there might be a number of different dots as well as lines located on here, and these are meant to convey each of the different noise sensitive and non-noise sensitive resources or properties along the project corridor that were included within the noise assessment. So each of those little dots we can call receptors, and you might see that they're different colors, indicating whether or not we have projected those properties that those receptors are tied to qualify as impacted by traffic noise associated with this project, again, based upon the findings of our noise assessment, or maybe not impacted. Additionally, for areas where we have proposed noise barriers, you'll see that there may be different colors indicating that you might be impacted and benefited by a noise barrier that might be proposed for that area, or maybe you're not currently expected to experience much of a noise reduction benefit from a proposed noise wall. And speaking of noise walls, we also highlight for each of those different locations which barriers are currently existing ones that may not be affected by this project, which ones we are currently expecting to maybe come into some minor conflict with the project design that could require the replacement of those existing barriers. And again, that would generally be in the same location, expected to generally be the same dimensions, if not a bit greater, based upon the needs to basically verify that noise reduction based upon the new project. And then we also have new locations that are highlighted along the project corridor where we may not have any existing noise barriers out there currently, but we are proposing ones based upon the preliminary design. And again, all of this information is subject to change based upon any design revisions in the future, but based upon the current information, these are generally our findings. And then lastly, we do have other areas located along the project corridor that we assessed, identified as potentially being impacted by traffic noise in the future. But for one reason or another, we have found that noise barriers are either not constructible for those locations. Maybe they have overriding constructibility or maintenance concerns. With the information we have right now, maybe we are expecting that we may not be able to construct something there. There could be a variety of reasons for noise barriers to not ultimately be proposed at this time. But again, this information is subject to change based upon revisions to the project in the future. So again, if you have concerns about any particular areas, we highly recommend that you submit a comment and maybe call to attention one of those areas. So with that being said, I don't know that there's really too much more to go through regarding this. However, if you do click on any barriers, you'll generally see what the average height is currently expected to be. But again, it's all tentative and subject to future design revisions.
Appreciate it, Miles. So yeah, that was a good detailed rundown of that process and that useful noise tool on the VMR that we talked about earlier. So had a few questions come in while Miles was giving us the run through there. So just first here, I'm actually going to kick this one to our environmental lead that works with Miles, Amber Phillips. So Amber, this first Question, comment. When you say the plans are subject to change, how is the community impacted by these changes notified? So far, communication has been more reactive than active, creating frustrations to our neighborhood.
Yes, thank you for that question. So the way we're going to respond as part of the PIOH effort is we will take and gather all the feedback that we receive from this project, and we will provide a response letter to all the comments that we get. In addition to that, they will also be incorporated. The final decision will be incorporated into the final EIS. As we do changes, there may be other ways, multiple ways that we can respond. So if, there is a change to a neighborhood, we may do a stakeholders outreach to that neighborhood. Or if you're on the project email list, we can update with our newsletter, and updates will be posted on the project website. And so those are multiple ways that we will respond. Thank you so much for the question.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Amber. So next up here, just as far as on the constructability region, we're going to call in David Hannon. So David, and I got a follow-up or two for you after this one. Will the project be segmented, and what are the segments?
Yes, the project will be delivered in segments. The scope of this project is just so large, it can't be delivered all at one time. The actual segmentation of the project is to be determined during the procurement process and discussions with prospective proposers.
Okay. And while we got you up there, an additional question in your realm is, will the project include maintenance of the I-285 corridor from right-of-way to right-of-way?
This is another thing that's expected to be kind of refined and determined during the procurement process and discussions with proposers. At this time, though, GDOT is considering that the anticipated developer would be responsible for maintenance of the new express lanes, but not necessarily the existing general purpose lanes.
Okay. And a third one for you here while we got you on screen still. So when is the earliest that construction could start on this project, and what's the expected duration of construction?
The earliest construction is expected to start is about 2027. That will give us enough time to procure a developer for the project and then give them time to close financing on the project. The expected construction duration for all phases is 8 to 10 years.
Okay. And I'll kind of shoot one to you. So just as far as that procurement and that financing, that they're seeing the P3, you may wonder what that really means. So can you talk about the innovation that's being used on this particular project?
Sure. So this project's being procured under what's called a public-private partnership. So a public-private partnership is exactly that. It's a partnership between a private developer and in this case, the State Road and Toll Authority and the Georgia DOT to deliver a project. And so with that, they're going to develop the project and provide most of the funding and financing for that project. So the expected project cost on this project is in excess of $10 billion. And so with a public-private partnership, the state only has to contribute a fraction of that, and then the developer is using financing and their own equity to fund the rest of the project, and then they hope to get reimbursed with future toll revenue.
Thank you, sir. And also, at the end of the day, customer service is going to be their main goal.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go back to Amber on the environmental front. Okay, so Amber, does the environmental impact statement address the dozens of trees that were removed for the new bridge at Mount Vernon? Has there been any commitment to replace the trees that were cut down for no apparent reason?
All right, so the Mount Vernon project that's currently under construction is not a part of this project. So our project is not covering that project. But as far as this project, we don't specifically account for the tree clearing. Tree clearing is done for multiple reasons, such as, safety, if a tree falls on the interstate, things like that. However, as part of this process, we are also asking for the public's concerns with mitigation and impacts. So if you could respond to different types of mitigation, we can look at if those mitigations can be added to the project. And if not, we will let you know why we are unable to add those as the project progresses and the final EIS is approved. Thank you so much for the question.
All right, so next question that we have come in, we're going to call on Phil Copeland. He's our right-of-way subject matter expert. Okay, Phil, so will additional right-of-way or easements along I-285 be required?
Yes, Kyle, thank you very much for the opportunity to answer that question. There will be additional right-of-way and easements in certain areas that will need to be acquired to facilitate the Express Lane project. If you visit the virtual room and you go to the preferred alternative station, you will be able to find layouts, a series of layouts across the corridor. You will find the property or the area that you're interested in those series of layouts, and then you will be able to look and depict where your property is to see whether or not it is impacted. If it is impacted, there will be a red line indicating where the new limits of the proposed impacts will be. I would caution you that recognize that these are subject to change, but if you locate your property and there is an indication that it has been assigned a parcel number with a proposed right-of-way or easement, as you see there on the screen, the red numbers notate that it has been identified as a potential impact. Then if you go back to the stations along the top of the web page, you will see a GDOT resource station. Then inside that GDOT resource station, there is also the opportunity for you to get an understanding of what the right-of-way acquisition process looks like as far as the steps that we navigate. You see them there on the bottom left. That will identify the steps that are gone through after we have identified a need, and then the timeline that is typically associated with an acquisition. Also on that same page is the right-of-way informational brochure that you can download, and you will see a more narrative version of the display of what happens in each one of those steps, your engagement as the property owner, and the department's engagement with you on how that process takes. So again, I would encourage you to visit the concept layouts and then visit the right-of-way station to see the processes that are undertaken. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, Phil, thanks a lot. So next we got a back-to-back for Miles Kemp. So we're going to get him back on the air and noise front. So Miles, this particular question is, when were these noise assessments conducted?
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, so the noise assessment was initially approved. The one included in the current 2023 or 2024 draft environmental impact statement was approved last summer, I believe in June of 2023. And we have continued to kind of make updates to that based upon the current iteration of the design. So I believe the last update was in November. For one of the barrier locations, we had some refined design information that kind of triggered the need to reassess. But that's not to say that it didn't start, a good bit earlier. I mean, these projects take a lot of preparation and development, especially for the environmental technical studies, noise assessment being one of those. So for example, I think the initial field measurements that were kind of utilized to, I guess, kind of provide a little bit of a baseline for validation of the noise assessment, where those field measurements were collected in, I believe, September of 2019. But that's not to say that we're using that as the basis for determining traffic noise impacts. We don't consider just the existing traffic noise levels when we're indicating whether or not, hey, you're expected to experience a traffic noise impact associated with the project. That's just absolutely not true. We look at future traffic noise conditions that would be tied to the construction of the project and the completion of that project, as well as any additional traffic volumes that could be associated not only with, say, the additional express lanes that are proposed for this project, but any future kind of expected growth in traffic that may not be 100% tied to the project. So that condition doesn't exist right now. So you can't just say, hey, you know, we're looking at existing levels. We just add something on and say, this is about how much louder it's going to be. We go through a rigorous process to project those future traffic noise levels as required by the Federal Highway Administration's noise regulations, using a noise modeling software that, again, they require for use and they provide to us. And that basically incorporates everything as far as the project design goes, anything that's not changing that's within the project limits, things such as those, you know, elevated express lanes, any other major adjustments and whatnot. You know, it incorporates existing barriers that might be out there that are not proposed to be removed and replaced. There's a lot of things that go into this effort. So it does take a good bit of time. And I think, again, that ultimately culminated in that initial noise approval that's part of the DEIS that was completed in June of 2023. And again, you know, as there's design changes, we'll continue to, you know, update and revise that as needed.
Okay, Miles. So next one is more the terminology that folks might see when they're utilizing the noise tool. So this is specific to the 285 West segment between Roswell Road and Lake Forest Drive. What does not feasible for constructability mean?
Not that it's self-explanatory, but essentially what it's pointing out is that we have identified either constructability or maintenance concerns that are potentially precluding a barrier from meeting GDOT requirements or standards to safely construct a noise barrier. That could certainly be one reason. I think for this location in particular, we've identified a couple of major concerns, such as having, you know, inadequate space to actually install a noise barrier that might be ground mounted. You know, maybe we wouldn't put it on a existing or proposed structure. We would just install it into the earth. But again, there are standards and requirements that are associated with that. And if we can't meet those standards, we don't have a wall that could be safely constructed. In some instances, we might have a wall that can be safely constructed, but there are limitations on what can actually safely be constructed. And if that's the case, we have to work within those limitations, and that might affect, you know, how well that barrier could perform. You know, to that end, we do have requirements, like minimum requirements, again, under federal regulations, as far as, you know, what sort of effectiveness or performance these barriers should be achieving in order to basically be required for consideration. Again, you know, we can look further into that specific area. There's a lot to potentially talk about there. I mean, when we look at areas where we do have conflicts like this and maybe some limitations that we need to kind of work within, we'll look at other alternatives. Like maybe there's an existing retaining wall out there that we need to consider mounting a barrier to. But under most circumstances, those existing structures are not designed to accommodate any additional weight or structure that might be mounted to it. So that could also be a very specific problem. But effectively, again, it basically means that we have identified concerns that are not meeting our GDOT design standards, that are precluding us from saying a barrier can be constructed at that location based upon the current design of the project.
Awesome. And kind of along that same line of the previous question, just as when folks see that terminology, they're still kind of curious on what that means as far as sound mitigation. So noise mitigation, the map says in some areas sound barriers are not recommended. We live along one of those areas. What does that mean and why?
Yeah, and again, that kind of varies from location to location. And I think we tried to generally identify some of the reasoning for each of those locations where maybe we're not currently recommending barriers. And again, it varies from location to location. Fortunately, if you do want more details, again, we definitely recommend you reach out, leave a comment. You know, kind of going through each of those ones on the virtual Q&A session can take a bit of time. But again, we can definitely get back to you directly if, you know, you want more specific information about a specific location. But we also have the full noise impact assessment and more detailed information that, you know, the noise study tool and those findings, those figures and whatnot are based on. And those are all located on the project website. If you go to the homepage On the project website, there will be that environmental tab up at the top. You can click on that, scroll down to, I think it's Appendix 9, if I'm not mistaken. And it'll actually be at the main, like, 285 just general like hub page outside of the virtual meeting room.
Thank you, sir. So I'm actually going to call on Patrick, our design expert, next to take folks through some key sections of the I-285 Top End Express Lanes video. So Patrick has been in the lab working on this for a long time with his large team. So just kind of wanted to go through what you're looking at when you view that video on our website. So we'll get that
Thanks,
up here.
Kyle. Yeah, thanks, Kyle. It's awesome to have the opportunity to get to kind of present this stuff to folks. So what we're looking at on the screen right here is a 3D rendering of the Express Lane project. To get you kind of oriented to what you're looking at, purple is the Express Lane project. Anything in gray is basically what's out there today. The legend up in the upper left depicts sort of the overview of the whole corridor. So you've got the 75 interchange on the left and the I-85 interchange on the right, with 400 down the middle. And that little purple dot sort of indicates about where we are in the world as we're kind of moving along the highway there. So we're approaching the Chattahoochee River here. You'll notice that the express lanes are elevated in both directions, 2 lanes. And we're have different access points throughout the corridor as we kind of cross through this. So you're coming up on an access point here that allow you to get into the express lanes in the eastbound direction or get out of the express lanes in the westbound direction. And we call those direct merges, just some terminology there for folks. And as we approach the Northside Drive interchange, this is going to go up and over that interchange. So that's a separate existing interchange that's out there today. It's going to stay and remain in operation, but we'll just go up and over it with the express lanes. And then as we keep going through here, we'll start to kind of come back down to grade a little bit. So this is the other half, another direct merge that we're coming up on. Folks will be able to get out of the express lanes in the eastbound direction and get back into the general purpose lanes. And they'll also be able to get into the express lanes heading westbound from the general purpose lanes. So we're at grade in this area before we get over, go over the Raider Drive overpass at the top of your screen. And then we're about to approach the Riverside Drive area as well as sort of the Roswell Road area. We'll go up and over those interchanges as well. So and in this area, we'll go back underneath Mount Vernon. So there is a project that's out there under construction right now. This is the 0017130 auxiliary lane project to replace the Mount Vernon Bridge. That bridge was replaced with the intention of allowing for the extra space for the express lanes to go underneath them. And then as soon as they go underneath that bridge, we'll head up again and head over towards the very complicated 285-400 interchange as we cross over Roswell Road. On the left here is a notable park. So this is Allen Road Park. We're anticipating no impacts to that park right now. So it's just a win for the project. We're able to completely stay off of it. And then as we're approaching Roswell Road, this the general purpose lanes that you see here on the screen, this is pretty reflective of what's just been constructed with the Transform 285-400 project that's out there today. They're just wrapping up that construction imminently, and the purple lanes will go basically in a space that's been preserved for the columns for the express lanes. And then as we make the turn as the approach to 285-400, we're looking south now. The camera's going to pan, look at Johnson Ferry Road. That bridge is proposed to be replaced with 2 egress and ingress ramps. We call them terminal ramps to the express lanes that will be on 400. And users will be able to get into the express lanes and head north. So the camera's going to pan and turn. And we'll be able to follow it all the way up north as we tie into the 400 express lane projects. Again, you'll see access roads to Johnson Ferry as well. So on the right side of your screen, there's the entrance ramp heading north, as well as the southbound exit ramp to Johnson Ferry. And those are direct access ramps, or DARs, to get into the express lane system, and those only serve 400. And we're heading north now, past the King and Queen building on the right, and up and over Hammond Drive. Now we're approaching Mount Vernon interchange, another direct access ramp that serves the local network. And so users will be able to get in at Mount Vernon and head south. And then we're just about at the northern terminus on 400, where we're tie into the express lane, the 400 express lane project. That project's not shown on these graphics, but the two projects do tie together right around the North Morse Springs MARTA station.
So while we're going through this video, Patrick, a question came in just related to the elevated lanes and the height. So this is, what is the approximate height of the elevated lane between Riverside and Powers Ferry? It doesn't seem like a sound barrier. The proposed 30 feet would do much to dampen sound for a lane that appears to be close to 30 feet in elevation.
Well, that's an excellent question. So as the video showed, we're about 50 to 60 feet above the existing general purpose lane elevation because we're going over Riverside. But we actually get more abatement by putting a ground mounted barrier to protect against the noise that's generated from the general purpose lanes. 18-wheelers will not be allowed in the express lanes. And so the noise is significantly less, but so we get more abatement and actually better benefit by putting a ground mounted sign or noise barrier to protect against noise.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So just kind of resetting for those who may have joined a little bit later, hopefully we've got some different folks in the corridor. Obviously, there's a lot of communities affected by this proposed project, and we want to hear from everybody. So specifically our Spanish speaking audience that may be joining us, we understand there's a sizable population in this project area. So for that reason, we have a Spanish translator here to help facilitate the meeting. If you're more comfortable asking questions in Spanish, follow the instructions on this slide to submit your question. Our translator is going to be standing by to consult with the subject matter experts to then provide an answer in Spanish within the Q&A feature in Microsoft Teams Town Hall. So please take advantage of that, and thank you for joining us if this applies to you. So a few more questions that we have come in. I'm actually going to answer this one. So what's the PI or project information number for the express lanes on 400 outside of 285? Well, that particular PI is 0001757. So you may have heard some discussion of the planned express lanes up north in the 400 corridor from basically where this project, kind of leaves off heading into Forsyth County. That's currently in active procurement. We've actually just opened 3 bridges in advance of that project as well, delivering some local road improvements to City of Sandy Springs with 2 bridges at Roberts Drive and Pitts Road, and also up in Alpharetta as well. So those have gone well, multimodal aspects tying into aesthetic packages with both of those local governments. So we've had a good working relationship with them, and that's some good positive on schedule or ahead of schedule openings that we've recently had. And next, I'm going to kick it back to Phil on the right-of-way front. Okay, Phil, so this question is, will GDOT be requiring the right-of-way needed, or will this be a task for the developer?
Yes, thank you, Kyle. The right-of-way that you will see in the concept displays that are part of this environmental exercise in this virtual meeting will be acquired by GDOT as the proposed right-of-way. GDOT will be the entity responsible for acquiring it, and then will make it available to the developer in the future for their purposes of constructing and maintaining the express lanes. However, there is the possibility that a developer could propose an alternative right-of-way need for a design that they may be proposing. And if that is the case, then they would be responsible for acquiring that right-of-way at a later date, and it would have to be addressed through an environmental reeval. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, Phil, appreciate it. So I'm actually going to send one to Amber Phillips on the environmental front. So we've definitely built a more robust virtual meeting room footprint. All our projects, when we do virtual involvement, folks can leave comments via that survey. Amber, just from your side of things on the environmental department, how have you seen that be advantageous to the department and also show folks that we're listening and we care about their feedback?
Yes, thank you, Kyle. We've definitely worked very hard over the last 4 years to continually improve our virtual platform, the materials that you're seeing on the website today, those that are created. We definitely have a survey tool on our public comment card, so we're constantly looking to continue making those improvements. What is working for you as citizens? What can we do better? So if you could provide even feedback in a general sense as part of your process, that really benefits us and benefits what we can show you. Also, another benefit is we are very pleased we're able to go and be available when you are all available to look at the project website. If you ever have questions while you're going through the project website, we have our contact information on there, and you can feel free to contact us. But we're definitely have been working very hard to be able to be where the citizens are at a time that's more convenient. So again, please provide that feedback even on our platform as you're providing your project comments.
Thanks for that, Amber. So I had a question come in just generally about where folks can see the plan. So like Amber was just talking about, when you're going through that VMR or the virtual meeting room, you'll be able to click on the concept design tab on the project website to see all those concept layouts. So there's going to be several what we call roll plots, which if you were there in person, in the coming days at some of our meetings, or you were there last night at Doraville, you would have saw a big long display, given this is about a 20-mile corridor on 285. So you can click on those concept displays. You can download those to your device, your laptop, your tablet, to view at any time. And again, some refinements will probably be made to that preliminary design concept, whether it's right of way or exact location. But this is, what we have at this time that we want to get your feedback on currently. Okay, so still waiting for a few more questions to come in here. So let's just sort of tour through the VMR one more time. So we'll kind of start back at the welcome station. So all kinds of helpful information here. It's basically, you're coming in the door, you're getting the welcome video from Natalie that's breaking down what our process is, why your feedback is important. So let's go ahead and just roll that video. Okay, it's all right. We don't have the volume there, but so you can watch that anytime. That VMR is not going to go away even when the comment period is over on Monday the 29th. It's still going to be a resource you'd always go back to. These recordings are going to be posted there as well. Okay, so while I was running my mouth, looks like we have a few more questions come in. So thank y'all for your engagement this evening. So we're going to, let's get Patrick back up on the screen. So this is a design question. So Patrick, just as far as this is concerning on and off ramps. So how will the on and off ramps be configured? Where will they be located?
Yeah, access points to and from the express lanes are going to be available at various locations. And we're actually going to pull up a graphic here in a minute that'll sort of show all of them. But direct access ramps will allow users to enter and exit directly at designated roadways, so to the local network, as well as direct merges to get between the systems. So the graphic that's coming up on the screen now. Sorry, just wait for that to load. You'll see two different colors. So the yellow ones are what we call express lane interchanges or direct access ramps, and those are the connections to the local network. So that's where there is an actual ramp that will connect to a cross street like Cumberland Boulevard, or Perimeter Center Parkway, Mount Vernon Highway, Glen Ridge Connector, Johnson Ferry Road, New Peachtree Road, and the green ones are the express lane merge locations, and that's where connections are going to go between the express lanes and the general purpose lanes. So at South Atlanta Road, Raider Drive, North Shallowford Road, and Henderson Road are the four locations proposed along the top end where users will be able to get out of the express lanes and enter the general purpose lanes on I-285. And then at connections, at the different system interchanges. So what's not depicted here is the connections to 75. So there is a connection at Northwest Corridor that allows seamless connection between the express lanes on 285 and the express lanes on 75. And that same type of connectivity will exist at 400 as well as at I-85. And then at the adjoining new systems that are yet to be built. So like I mentioned on the video, there's a connection at the SR 400 Express Lane project near the North Springs MARTA station at the top of the center of your screen. And then at South Atlanta Road and Henderson Road, there will be connections to the East Side Express Lane project as well as the West Side Express Lane project. So back to you, Kyle.
Appreciate it, Patrick. So still got a few questions coming in that we're working on. So for those of you who may have just joined us, we're actually going to go back to kind of our project intro video, which features our GDOT P3 project manager, Xavier James. So we're going to roll tape on Xavier's address.
Georgia DOT Project Manager for the P3 Division. I am glad that you could join us today to learn more about the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project, PI number 0001758. Let's get started with today's presentation ahead of our virtual question and answer session. First, the northern half of the I-285 is one of the most heavily traveled and congested interstate highways in the United States. More than 240,000 vehicles travel across this stretch of highway every weekday. The proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project is part of a larger effort to improve traffic flow and provide reliable trip times on our Metro Atlanta interstates. Instead of continuing to build general purpose lanes that will continue to fill up with vehicles, the Atlanta Regional Commission and our State Transportation Board adopted express lanes as a solution to manage congestion in Metro Atlanta and to provide reliable trip times as more people and businesses move to the region. Express lanes are optional price managed lanes that complement the existing interstate in some of the most congested corridors around Metro Atlanta. You don't have to use them, but motorists and transit customers can take advantage of the lanes to bypass congestion for a free-flowing trip. And that's right, I said it, transit customers. Georgia Express lanes are considered transit lanes, supporting opportunities for existing transit services and inclusion of new transit opportunities along I-285 corridor. Express Lane Transit, or ELT, allows public transit providers that operate in these corridors, including Express, MARTA, and state-registered van pools, to use the express lanes free of charge. Transit and registered van pool riders will only need to pay their standard transit rider fee. The proposed express lanes on I-285 are a mobility choice and expected to improve regional mobility, provide more reliable trip times for motorists, while also increasing on-time transit performance and accessibility. Identified in 2016, the ambitious Major Mobility Investment Program, or MMIP, is the first of its kind in the country and was developed to improve quality of life and build a better Georgia by creating additional capacity, improving freight movement, providing operational improvement and efficiencies, enhancing safety, and offering more reliable trip times. Within the MMIP portfolio are the addition of express lanes or managed lanes on State Route 400 and along the northern half of I-285 corridor. The I-285 Top-End Express Lane project proposes to add 2 new barrier-separated express lanes along I-285 between South Atlanta Road and Henderson Road, as well as on State Route 400 from South Glen Ridge Connector to the vicinity of North Springs MARTA Station. The proposed project spans 3 counties, Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb, crosses several cities, including Smyrna, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Chamblee, Doraville, and Tucker. The Express Lane project will be part of a larger Express Lane network. Motors will be able to access Express Lane facilities at dedicated interchanges and direct merge locations. The proposed access points can be seen on the illustrated map on your screen. Locations of the access points are subject to change. You may be wondering, how are these express lanes going to be built? Based on the latest project design or preferred alternative, majority of the project will be elevated to minimize impact to adjacent properties. Some sections of the proposed project will also be at grade. As you can see, areas of the project that have elevated lanes would extend above and alongside existing general purpose lanes on I-285. The project team studied a range of alternatives and design options to determine which alternative best addresses the mobility needs for the proposed project. We encourage you to scan the QR code or visit the project website to view the latest concept design layouts, which provide an area view of the project limits for the project's preferred alternative. As considered in the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, the DEIS document offers an in-depth description of each alternative within the range of alternatives, including the no-bill alternative, the preferred alternative, and other alternatives that were considered. As mentioned earlier, the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane is part of the MMIP portfolio and will be part of the Georgia Express Lanes network. However, express lanes on I-285 were being considered before the MMIP was announced as part of the Georgia DOT's Revive 285 initiative. Over the years, GDOT and its project team has engaged with local stakeholders and the public to demonstrate and showcase the proposed express lane project. The project team hosted a community conversation meeting series in 2019, followed by the public information open house series in 2020, conducted insights sessions with local stakeholders, community partners, and businesses, issued surveys for the project team, and have responded to meetings, requests, and public inquiries. As you can see on the project milestone timeline, the proposed project is now hosting an official public comment period as part of the Public Hearing Open House Series, or PHOH. This is your opportunity to review and provide your feedback that may be considered and will be incorporated in the official project records. We encourage you to submit comments on the updated concept design, DEIS document, mitigation plan. Following the close of the PHOH comment period, the project team will update the EIS document describing the project's potential environmental impact and include your comments and feedback in the EIS for final submittal. A record of decision, or ROD, is the final step to the EIS process and will be issued by FHWA announcing the selected alternative, informed by public and agency input. Georgia DOT anticipate final EIS and ROD from FHWA in late 2025. Please keep in mind this date is subject to change. And that concludes our presentation overview for the proposed I-285 Top-End Express Lane project. If you haven't already, we encourage you to visit the virtual meeting room platform on the project's website, where you can review the following project information: latest concept, display, or preferred alternative, DEIS document, and proposed mitigation plan. Once you have viewed project materials, remember to submit comments on the proposed project. Your feedback and questions must be submitted by July 29th, 2024. In addition to the virtual question and answer session, we will also be offering multiple in-person public hearing open house events. If you have any family, friends, or neighbors who are not able to join us today, we hope you tell them to stop by one of our in-person events. All the information available on the project website and presented in the virtual meeting rooms will be presented at the in-person open house events. Again, we hope you will review the DEIS mitigation plan and the updated concept design. If you have any questions, our panel of subject matter experts are available to answer. Once your question has been answered, please take a moment to submit your feedback on the proposed project via our online comment card, email, calling the project hotline, or by mailing your comments to the Georgia DOT offices. Now, I will hand it off to my colleague and the host for today's event, Kyle Collins. Thank you again for joining our virtual presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you during our question and answer session in just a few minutes.
Awesome. So we had some requests to kind of go back to that visual video in the 400 corridor. So we're going to get that queued up. And while we're doing that, I'm going to get Patrick to help me out with this question as well as he describes 400 after we answer this one. So Patrick, this question is, it appears the elevated north and southbound lanes on 400 between 285 and Abernathy are over the existing roadway. Is this correct, or will 400 need to be widened?
No, that's a great question. And as the video is about to come up, we don't anticipate any widening of the existing SR 400 travel lanes. New bridge columns are going to be located in the median, so no widening. And then as the video comes up, I'll start narrating just kind of heading points westward here. So we're heading looking towards the east here. So we're just above the Johnson Ferry access point. And you see those two direct access ramps in the lower part of your screen there connecting to Johnson Ferry. And then you'll also see the in the middle of the screen there, there's a lane heading northbound that'll get you into the express lanes from the general purpose lanes on 400, as well as an egress from the express lane system back to SR 400 southbound. And then, as I said, as the video was sort of pulling up, we just still didn't anticipate a 400 to be widened any further than it was already widened under the Transform 285-400 project. So all of the columns that you see, all of the straddle bends and the elevated lanes will be built on existing right-of-way and sort of shoehorned within the median. And then Kyle, we'll keep letting this play for a little while, and we'll head towards the eastern part of the project as it comes back down south from the top. Now we're heading south, so cameras turned 180 degrees, and we're heading back south now towards 285-400, towards that interchange. Again, up on the approaching here is the Mount Vernon interchange, the new proposed access point there. As we head south, camera will turn and pan to the west, the east, as we go around the King and Queen building.
And Patrick, while we're going through this, one of the questions was on the noise front. Folks see these proposed elevated express lanes in both directions. The question was, do I understand you correctly when you state there will be no noise abatement for elevated roads? So we may bring in Miles on this too, but wanted to give you first crack at it.
No, I think that's a great question. And we do get more abatement as we studied it from putting a ground mounted barrier. That doesn't mean that you can't put a noise barrier on the elevated lanes. It just means that we actually get more benefit by putting them on the ground, by mounting them on the ground. Miles can talk a little bit more about that process and how we've analyzed that, but that's generally what our studies are showing.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I'm happy to kind of jump in there and expand on that a little bit. The modeling that was completed for the project included obviously the elevated express lanes and additional things that might affect how traffic noise is emanating both from existing I-285 and those elevated express lanes. Part of that was the consideration of whether or not those elevated express lanes have like a direct line of sight to adjacent noise sensitive properties like residences and whatnot. And part of it, what we actually looked at early on, was the currently expected design for those express lanes and the kind of sidewalls that would likely be included along the sides of those express lanes. And so that in some way, shape, or form is contributing a little bit to some reduction or at least blockage of that line of sight to those nearby noise sensitive properties. So really, if we were to propose or consider noise barriers on those express lanes, there would be very limited, if any, reduction contributed from elevated express lane. That's also going to see not only less capacity compared to existing I-285, and you can see that kind of on the screen here. You have many more lanes, as well as less restricted access. So we wouldn't be having like heavy trucks, such as like big old shipping trucks and whatnot on those express lanes. So that is a factor as well, because noise could come from maybe exhaust stacks on particular heavy trucks. So with that limitation taking away some of that noise from the elevated express lanes, that again, largely you have the chief noise source being existing I-285, and like ramps and whatnot. So we really do get the most bang for our buck as far as reducing traffic noise effectively by putting those noise barriers along those ground mounted sections. And again, I just want to reiterate that if we were to look at those in concert with barriers along the elevated express lanes, there really wouldn't be much, if any, additional reduction achieved.
Thanks for that, Miles. So while we're still running this visual video, which is available on the website, so make sure y'all check it out if you haven't already, we're going to go speak on additional environmental topics. So we're going to get Amber back up for this one. So Amber, I've actually got a back-to-back for you, so don't go anywhere. The visualizations show the proposed roads right next to existing trees. I assume that's not actually going to happen. How many feet of trees will need to be cut back for the lanes to be constructed? Is there a visualization that shows what trees are expected to be cut?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, this video is an artistic rendering, so it is not necessarily exact of what may occur in the field or what you may actually see from any specific vantage point. So tree clearing will be done within the existing and our required right-of-way and any easements that we have to obtain as part of this project. And so the final design is going to be based upon that. So again, right now we're in preliminary design. So those are not currently estimated, but it is going to be within our existing and proposed right-of-way that we're acquiring. As part of this project, we have acknowledged within the draft environmental impact statement that there are going to be visual effects associated with this project, both from tree clearing, the new lanes that are going in and being proposed to go in. And so as part of this process, we understand that things like this are important to the community at large. And so we're definitely seeking, as part of this hearing process, your input on mitigation measures. And again, we will be able to respond to those after the process will work is we're going to gather those as part of this hearing. We're going to be going out to some mitigation meetings within the community. So also look for those after this hearing series. And we'll work with looking at what mitigations we can provide as part of this project. We'll work with Federal Highway. We'll finalize the final EIS and ROD, and that's when those will be published with what we were and were not able to obtain. So if things like, visual ideas that you guys might have for mitigation, if that's important to you, then please provide those comments and that feedback for us to take into consideration. As a general, it is expected tree clearing, 15 to 20 feet of tree clearance is typical beyond the express lanes. So, right, for safety, driver safety, when the project's constructed, constructability. Of course, there could be locations, depending on design elements that may need different requirements from that.
Awesome. So next one on that front, and maybe on this visual video, if we could kind of scoot it back to the start, towards that 75 end, because this one pertains to the Chattahoochee River. So how will this project impact the portion that crosses over the Chattahoochee River?
Yes, thank you. So in the area of the Chattahoochee River, between the existing I-285 general purpose lanes and Powers Ferry, the lanes would impact. We wouldn't be impacting the general purpose lane or bridges in that area, but the proposed elevations are designed to be constructed within the existing GDOT right-of-way. So there'll be impacts to the Chattahoochee River itself as part of construction, and this would involve temporary impacts associated with the use of jetties to construct the piers and permanent impacts from those piers themselves. Construction would require the temporary closure of half of the river at a time for short durations. So the idea is that construction would preserve passage via the Chattahoochee River, as one side will remain passable at all times, except for, short durations when overhead construction would pose a safety concern. We are in continuous coordination with the National Park Service and the Chattahoochee River National Recreational Area to work on these impacts and ensure construction impacts are minimal and recreational use of the Chattahoochee River would be preserved as much as feasible and safety conditions allow. Thank you so much for that question.
Thanks, Amber. So this next one, we're going to go to project management. So we're going to get Xavier in here. So this one is related to transit. So folks have seen a lot of promotions and news, Xavier, about some of the collaboration we've had with cities and counties in this corridor and multiple agencies on trying to deliver a transit component to this. Can you just talk about that just generally? And also a general question is, why is GDOT building these lanes rather than building more transit specifically?
Yes, thank you, Kyle. Traditionally, funding for transit project comes from the Federal Transit Administration and local funding, and currently there is no sufficient funding for transit, for heavy rail transit, on our solution for I-285. But Georgia Department of Transportation is collaboratively working with the region's transit operations or operators and planning agencies through the ongoing study for transit within the I-285 express lanes. So the Georgia express lanes are also considered transit lanes, regardless of whether they're classified as bus rapid transit or any other type of transit. Express lane transit improves existing transit operations and performance, provides more reliable trip times, and promotes transit-oriented development. ELT, as I said, Express Lane Transit, supports existing transit services and future transit operations planned for the corridor as well. So I hope that answers your question, Kyle.
Yes, sir. So while we got you, got another one. This simulation doesn't show a proposed design north of the North Spring MARTA station. What's going on with the design of these north of this location?
Sure. The design, it doesn't show it because that is a part of the 400 Express Lane project, which is 0001757. And that, if you go on the project website, you'll be able to see the rendering for the 400 Express Lane project, and it will show from the North Spring Water Station all the way up to just north of McFarland. So you'll be able to obtain that from the Georgia Department of Transportation website. Like I said, utilizing the 0001757. Back to you, Kyle.
All right, so we're going to go back to Phil. We have an additional right-of-way and kind of a terminology question here. So can we clarify the term right-of-way for those who aren't clear?
Yes, thank you, Kyle. The term right-of-way is typically used to identify and refer to the property that GDOT owns that is necessary to support any of its transportation infrastructure, not only for the construction of it, but also for the operating and maintaining of it. So you hear the term right-of-way, but you may hear the term existing right-of-way in a context of this type of meeting. The existing right-of-way is referring to the right-of-way that GDOT currently owns that is needed to support the current 285, 400, 85 infrastructure along this corridor. There's also a reference at times to potential required right-of-way. That is a reference to additional right-of-way that would need to be acquired as part of this project to support the infrastructure, not only to construct it, but to also maintain it. So right-of-way is typically referred to as the property rights owned by GDOT. And again, existing is what they currently own, and proposed is what is being proposed to be purchased as part of this project. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, so next we just have a general timeline question, and I'm going to bring in David Hannon for this one. Okay, David, so what is the overall time frame for the anticipated start and completion of the I-285 top-end express lanes?
Thanks, Kyle. So the earliest construction is expected to start for this project is around 2027. That'll give the department enough time to procure a developer for the project, and then time for that developer to close financing on the project, which will then fund the project construction. And then the construction timeline for the project is expected to be about 8 to 10 years.
Thank you. So we have more air and noise questions that have come in. So Miles, you're up again. So the
Thanks, Scott.
question is, how will this project affect nearby air pollution levels?
That is a good question, and one we haven't addressed just yet. So as part of the environmental analyses that were completed for the project, part of that was the completion of an air quality impact assessment. So we looked at a variety of potential air quality effects tied to the proposed project, including project level mobile source air toxics, or MSAT, analyses, as well as how maybe the project would contribute to ozone in the overall Metro Atlanta region. And then also we looked at the project's potential contributions or effects for greenhouse gases. So generally, the requirements for the completion of those project level air quality analyses really identify exactly what we need to study and assess. A lot of it is really comparison of future projected emission levels against current levels, which generally tend to show that air quality at this point in time is generally expected to be a bit higher, in some cases a good bit higher than future conditions after the project's been constructed. But we also look at what we call a no-build alternative for that same kind of future design year horizon, just to kind of compare and contrast the project specific effects rather than just a change in emissions over time due to continued regulation, enforcement and whatnot, and actually fleet turnover, getting older roads or older vehicles off the road and putting more vehicles out there with cleaner burning engines. But overall, our analyses are conducted, according to EPA regulations, as well as just federal regulations under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. But again, a big component of that is comparison of existing levels to future levels, both with and without the project. And more information can be found in the air quality impact assessment that is located on our project website under the draft environmental impact statement. And I believe, again, it is one of the appendices for that project. I'm not sure offhand which it is, but highly recommend you take a look and check out some of those findings for the air quality impact assessment. And if you do have any additional concerns that maybe I haven't addressed, we absolutely encourage you to kind of leave a comment either on the project website, all the different means and methods that Kyle outlined earlier.
Right. I know we did it, excuse me, in our initial kickoff when we started the Q&A session, but could we bring back up that noise tool? And could you walk the folks through that and maybe joined after the start of the meeting, Miles?
Yeah, certainly. If we can get that back up on the screen, I'd be happy to kind of talk about the navigation of it and some of the kind of legend items, because there's a lot going on there. And it's a really handy resource that, basically if you have access to that project website, you go to the VMR, the virtual meeting room, and you go to the air and noise impact section, you'll quickly find that, I guess this is the center item in there, the noise tool. So again, really the way this kind of works is that it's based on preliminary information. So again, this information, these findings are subject to change based upon design refinements in the future. But if you want to find the information for a specific area, I would highly encourage that you type in an address in that top right corner. It kind of just functions as like a Google map kind of search function. You put in your address, you hit like search, it should come up with something that it thinks you're basically searching for. You click on that when it drops down, and it should zoom you into the general area where your address might be located. With that, you'll see, again, a lot of these little dots, which we can call receptors. Those are basically representing various locations that were included in the noise impact assessment. And with those different colors of those different receptors, you'll see whether or not, certain locations were projected to qualify as impacted by traffic noise, again, per the findings of our noise impact assessment. And I just want to remind everybody that this is considering not only existing I-285, but also the effects and contributions from the proposed project design, i.e. the elevated express lanes and any other improvements. So this is kind of looking at the big picture and the overall effects of this proposed project. So you'll see different colors that kind of indicate whether or not you're expected to experience a traffic noise impact in the future, whether or not for locations that barriers might be proposed if you qualify as benefited by a noise barrier. And while we're on the topic of noise barriers, you'll see a number of different colors that kind of highlight existing noise barriers that the project is not expected to disturb. Additional ones that we currently expect will require removal and then replacement. Again, generally in the same area, but we do have requirements for barrier effectiveness. So we do have targets to make sure that they are potentially reducing traffic noise for the condition that this project is playing a part of. There are other locations where we have new noise barriers that are being proposed. So there's may not be anything out there currently. Maybe there were new developments that came along, prior to previous projects out there that generated the other existing noise barriers. But in any case, we might have new locations where noise barriers are being proposed. And I think we have like 15 of them or so. Again, a lot of that information can be found back in that VMR, the virtual meeting room. There's a flyer about that. But again, if you want to look at that, you can click on those noise barriers too and see generally, what those average heights are. It kind of specifies, what impact area or like grouping of impacted properties or resources it's, can essentially associated with. And again, that kind of is tying it back to the noise assessment, the document that's located on the general project webpage. We also have areas where noise barriers were assessed. We had impacts projected for those areas. And for one reason or another, such as constructability issues, like we can't realistically construct a barrier there based upon GDOT design standards, or maybe it's simply not effective at reducing traffic noise for that area. Some areas we have limited space to even put something in there. Or in some cases, maybe it's just not going to be very effective. We might have limited impacts and there's limited benefit that that barrier can achieve, from a larger standpoint. So we do have certain thresholds, and you can definitely read about more of those requirements in our noise policy on our GDOT public facing noise website. And it highlights, basically those requirements there. But yeah, I mean, you can click on each of those individual areas, those boxed areas that you're kind of seeing on the screen, and it should generally highlight why those barriers may not be recommended for construction at this point in time, such as, again, constructability concerns or inability for those noise barriers to effectively reduce traffic noise. So again, this is just a high level kind of summary overview to kind of, highlight the information for those areas. If you're more interested in some of those details for those areas in particular where we're not proposing noise barriers, I do recommend that you take a look at the noise impact assessment that is associated with the draft environmental impact statement for the project.
Thank you, Miles. So we got another one for you on the noise front. More benefit from ground-mounted noise abatement does not necessarily mean that noise from the elevated roads is abated. Can you quantify, explain the estimated increase in noise as a result of adding elevated roadways?
Yeah, certainly. And, I can't give you hard numbers like right at this moment, but when we talk about, what is like abated or mitigated, we do have, again, calling back to our noise policy reference a minute ago, we do have requirements for what is considered to be an effective noise barrier or form of noise mitigation, noise abatement. And that, again, is outlined in our noise policy, which is basically interpreted or set based upon the Federal Highway Administration's noise regulations. It's 23 CFR, Part 772, if you're interested in searching that out on the web. But in any case, it does outline some minimum thresholds for what could be considered an effective noise barrier at the very least. And, if it's not achieving a minimum threshold, then we can't propose it or recommend it for construction, not as a noise barrier, because it's not performing. So for the purpose of, again, kind of calling back to existing I-285 versus the elevated express lane, we have a big disparity in the traffic volumes and thus the traffic noise that is tied to those two express lanes that might be on the outside of I-285 on both sides, compared to, in most sections, like 10 lanes of traffic along just general purpose I-285, existing I-285. So when you're looking at that traffic noise and the traffic volumes, generally the rule of thumb is that if you double the traffic, you might get a noticeable or somewhat noticeable, perceptible change in traffic noise. If you're not doing that, then the traffic noise from that larger traffic noise source, existing I-285 in this circumstance, is going to be drowning out any additional traffic noise that might be contributed from those elevated express lanes. And I just do want to kind of reiterate that as part of our analysis, we did need to consider, the location of these elevated express lanes. They are elevated in most sections, such as, the interchange that we're looking at right here for 285 and 85. And so that does play a role in the traffic noise location in relation to whether or not noise sensitive properties adjacent to those elevated express lanes have a direct line of sight. So some of that noise might pass right over properties that are directly adjacent. And certainly I'll say that the further you are away from the road, maybe the benefit of these noise barriers, it does diminish somewhat. They're generally going to be considered for resources that are directly adjacent to the interstate. We have limited ability to really reduce traffic noise, beyond a certain distance from the roadway. And I just want to also point out that those noise barriers are not proposed or expected to just cut out all the traffic noise. They can reduce it by a certain amount to be considered effective, but they can't just eliminate all of the traffic noise out there. But again, I just want to tie it back to the barriers along I-285 are generally meant to reduce the traffic noise from the chief noise source, which is existing I-285.
Thank you, Miles. So more environmental questions have come in, so we'll get Amber up here for this one. So Amber, we kind of get used to our GDOT acronyms and terminology, but This one is just kind of clarifying what mitigation means. So several of the subject matter experts have talked about mitigation. What does that mean as it relates to this I-285 Top End Express Lanes project?
Yes, thank you. So environmental mitigation, partially it's the process by which your measures are implemented to minimize, reduce, or offset an environmental impact. So an example of that, since noise has been a popular topic, noise impacts, we mitigate some of those when we're able to feasibly and reasonably construct a noise wall. That would be a form of mitigation. And so that process we were working with, right? We'll work with locals, we work with stakeholders, we're working with the community at large, during in part of this hearing process. And I've mentioned that we do plan on going out to specific mitigation meetings. So what we want to do as part of the mitigation and highlighting this as important is be able to work with communities directly to incorporate measures into the project that meet the community's needs. And that is definitely our goal. So we're definitely really focusing on that during this series and at our in-person meetings. So we definitely want to hear from the public on what types of mitigation measures they would like us to see. Sometimes they're definitely not all possible, as we've also seen today, where some noise walls are not feasible to construct. But we will definitely consider all and again respond to those after the final EIS is approved. And if the project does that, we'll put all of those measures out there for how we responded will then be available to the public for either why we could or if we could not incorporate a mitigation measure. So thank you so much for that question.
And Amber, another question for you. This one concerns equity in transportation. So how is Georgia DOT addressing equity in transportation with these proposed express lanes?
Yes, thank you so much. So Georgia DOT and CERTA are working together on the development of an equity framework, and Georgia DOT is focused on community engagement. So the Georgia Express lanes offer another travel option in addition to the existing general purpose lanes. No one is required to, of course, use the express lane facility, are required to pay a toll unless they choose to use the express lanes. So the express lane project does not eliminate any of the existing general purpose lanes on I-285, which of course will remain to drivers at no cost. The express lanes on I-285 would support existing and future bus transit options. So public transit providers that may operate in this corridor and state registered van pools will be able to use the express lanes free of charge. Transit and registered van pool riders will only need to pay their standard transit rider fee. And Georgia DOT is collaborating with ATL, MARTA, ARC, and the 4 metro Atlanta counties to advance express lane transit to create more regional connectivity and expand transit operations in the metro region. So we're all partnering together to address this and address the travel needs of the public. Thank you so much.
And Amber, perfect segue. You mentioned partnerships. So we have representation from CERTA on the event this evening. I'm actually going to call on Erica for this next question. And Erica, this is related to Peach Passes. So when these lanes open, will it be for Peach Passes only?
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely not. It's not just for Peach Pass users. Peach Pass is interoperable with SunPass in Florida, Quick Pass in North Carolina, and Easy Pass, which has 18 states from Florida to Maine and in between. So this project not only expands our connectivity within the region, but it also expands it outside of the state for a seamless transportation network.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Okay, so we're going to get Patrick back on the design front for this next question. So, Patrick, will the elevated express lanes be paved with asphalt, or will that be cement-based lanes?
That's a great question, Kyle. And the choice of pavement is actually going to be left up to the developer. He's going to be maintaining the lanes based on the best life cycle cost. But since most of the lanes are going to be elevated, or at least they're proposed to be, we expect that they'll be concrete, since that's what they'll use to, construct a bridge deck.
Thank you for that. So, Xavier, we have one for you on the project management side. So, what is going to be done to ensure that travel time and congestion is not significantly and adversely affected during construction?
Thanks, Kyle. Construction activities will require temporary lanes and road closures and would likely result in some commuter delays. Although GDOT looks to minimize traffic impacts and interruptions to the traveling public, safety is also a major factor while construction is underway. Where lanes, road closures, detours, and traffic shifts are required during construction, GDOT traffic control standards will be followed and information will be communicated in advance to the traveling public. A traffic management plan will be prepared during the final design. This plan will determine how to best accommodate the travel and safety needs during construction, and will identify strategies to manage work zone impacts. And also a public involvement and communication plan will also be prepared during final design, and will identify strategies and methods for sharing construction related information with residents, businesses, and travelers.
Thanks, Xavier. So, we've got a request that came in just to show the Paces Ferry Cumberland section of this project. So, we'll get that video pulled back up. I may tag in Patrick too to get him to kind of describe that general area. So once you begin the video in the virtual meeting room, it's going to start on the 75 end, kind of that South Atlanta Road side, and then it's going to start to meander towards 400, 85, and then obviously ending on the scope of this project at Henderson Road, and then we have the 3 miles on 400. So maybe we could get it to that particular part, and we'll let Patrick add any extra details he think would be of interest.
Yeah, we're just east of that area right now. So if we can slide the video back towards the very beginning, we'll be near the close spot. But essentially, there's going to be an entrance ramp right into the general purpose lanes. And it's up on the screen here. So the egress right under Orchard Road allows you into the express lanes on the right side of your screen, with a terminal ramp heading in the opposite direction on the left side of your screen that gets you back into the general purpose. The orange that you see here on the left is really just some reconstruction of the existing on-ramp from Paces Ferry, just to accommodate the express lanes. Express lanes will go up and over Paces Ferry, staying on the outside through the Cumberland area. There's a future connection for a future access point at Mount Wilkinson that the West Side Express Lane project would propose. That's not being constructed as part of Top End, but that will happen under a future phase. Approaching Cumberland Boulevard here, this is a half diamond, so this is sort of the eastern half of the access point that sort of is a sister access point to the one I just mentioned a minute ago. So at this point, you'll have ramps that go into the express lanes connecting to Cumberland Boulevard. You'll see the Battery up on the left, the Braves Stadium. And as we're approaching the Northwest Corridor here, there'll be a connection that takes users into the Northwest Corridor in the northbound direction in the evenings, as well as a southbound direction in the mornings. There's full connectivity at this interchange between the outside of the perimeter and the 285 express lanes. So you'll be able to go east or west as you're coming into the perimeter from the north, or from parts east or west of the perimeter heading north. You'll be able to get into the express lanes as well, depending on time of day. So really just utilizing a lot of the existing infrastructure that's out there, not a lot of modifications to the Northwest Corridor lanes themselves at all, Kyle.
Right. And Patrick, folks are seeing a major system concept on the screen, and, you're part of the team leadership that helped get it to this point where we could showcase these design files to the public. Maybe just talking about that process. I know it's been several years in the making to get where we are presenting this latest design layout. A lot of stakeholder engagement, different feedback, and trying to mitigate those impacts. Maybe at a high level, just go through what that process has been like for your team.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun, to be honest, with everybody. It's been a pleasure. We've had the opportunity to coordinate with all the jurisdictions along the corridor. All the cities and counties have played an integral role in us getting the project coordinated. We started from an initial, just sort of lines on a page, just starting to see what it might look like. And as you kind of meet with stakeholders, and we went to the public in our PIHOH event 4 years ago, just to get it to this point has been really, really a fun and rewarding time of my career. But it's also for our team. They've really enjoyed the opportunity to have such a positive impact on the region.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the hard work. So we were going to get Xavier up on the project management side for a few more questions this evening. So still got 15 minutes left. Y'all make sure, tell your friends and family to join. They still have time to get those questions in. Okay, so Xavier, are there any access points co-located or near existing MARTA rail stations?
Yeah, so I-25 access points are near Doraville, Sandy Springs, and the Dunwoody MARTA stations. State Route 400 access points are near North Springs and the Medical Center.
And just talking in general, we're mentioning the transit aspect of this and how that is going to be fully integrated and working with our partners, the cities and counties in this corridor. So next question is kind of in line with that on sustainability and as far as transportation goes. So what is being done to shift trips toward transit and other more sustainable modes of transportation?
So as I mentioned previously, ELT or Express Lane Transit, so this project supports that system. So that future operation of bus transit operations is supported. And by providing more reliable trip time, transit agencies can make use of the express lanes to run their buses, potentially expand bus routes for better and more reliable transit service, which in turn may result in a shift of mode choice by some transit users, thereby reducing vehicle miles traveled on the road. So that's one way it will be beneficial to transit providers and its users.
Thank you. So we're back in the VMR, and just to go back to the environmental front, Xavier, Patrick, a lot of the folks on the call this evening had mentioned the previous outreach that we did, the PIOH series in 2019 going into 2020. We actually have some materials that showcases what has changed since then in our virtual meeting room website. So we're going to kind of get that up and get Amber to just give some perspective on, again, how that shows that we are listening and some of that feedback contributed to changes and what you're seeing this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Definitely, as I mentioned earlier in this meeting, we have been working on our virtual platform. So if you've been with or attended some of our GDOT meetings in the past, we didn't really have a virtual platform. So we've been working on making sure that we are showcasing our projects, providing better access to the project information and details at a time that is really convenient to citizens of Georgia. So before, when you would have to go to only our in-person events. So we're definitely very excited to be able to present, virtual meetings like this, or even for those that can't attend, if you have neighbors or friends within the corridor that can't attend these live virtual events or even our in-person events, they can still go to the website, access all of these materials via the meeting room. Of course, we also have additional materials outside of the meeting room, and those will stay up and remain. So even after the hearing series is over, if people are interested still in, checking out the noise tool, that will still exist on our website. And so we're just really trying to continuously make improvements to this platform. So again, as a result of this process, we definitely want you to provide comments on the project. And also, if you notice anything that you would like to see, even if it's continue doing something, change something, any recommendations for the process, whether it's in person, virtual, the meeting platform, we definitely would ask that you guys comment. We do take that feedback into consideration. Some of the past feedback that we received from the public is what led us to doing this type of platform on the websites. And so we're continuously looking for ways to improve that. And so we're very excited to be able to offer, the virtual meeting room that we have on this project. And hopefully that those can answer most of your questions, especially if people are unable to attend during the times that we are having these types of meetings and our in-person meetings. So we want to thank you all for coming to the meetings, even if it's just visiting the website. So thank you so much, Kyle.
Definitely. And another reminder, you see the save the dates there. So we're knocking out the number 2 outreach effort this evening with a virtual session. We're in Doraville in person yesterday evening. Had a lot of good feedback from folks that showed up there. And you see listed, we have one coming up tomorrow night, or actually during the middle of the day from 11 to 2. And then we have additional opportunities coming up next week, 2 in person and running back another virtual session as well. So definitely need your comments through Monday, July 29th. Like Amber just expounded on, that's very important to us, and that helps us provide a better product, better design, better mitigation measures in our planning for the current proposal. And a great thing too about that virtual format is just always being able to go back. You can watch this recording back, all the resources throughout the life cycle of this project from the PIOH period 2019, 2020, the previous iterations of this project. It's all located at that 285 Top End Express Lanes GDOT project hub. So definitely bookmark that one if you're in this corridor, because that's going to be something of interest to you as this project continues to develop. So we're going to get David Hannon back on this one. 9 more minutes, so make sure you get your questions in. So David, what are the benefits versus risk of the private revenue model of delivery?
Thanks, Kyle. So the benefits to the taxpayers and to the Georgia DOT is that the private sector bears the financial risk for most of the cost of the project, and they're taking the risk that they'll be able to repay themselves through future toll revenue. And to try to ensure that they are able to achieve that toll revenue, they take a strong customer service approach. They want people to use the express lanes, and they're relying on motorist use to generate that toll revenue to pay themselves back. This also results in a drastic reduction in public funds required to construct these projects, which is, again, a huge benefit for taxpayers if the public isn't paying for this through tax dollars, and then the state can use that money to build other projects. Georgia DOT seeks to provide the best value to the taxpayer and is proactively engaged with the industry, and we'll have a public procurement process with partners who have a track record of successfully delivering these projects around the United States. And then this P3 demand risk model lets the state better allocate resources to leverage private sector innovation and capital. And it should also accelerate the project delivery. And as I mentioned before, it reduces the public funding required for the project.
Thanks for that, David. So still have, roughly 7 minutes left. I kind of want to put a reminder out there. Folks maybe have just joined us about the accessibility options, and specifically the language accommodations that we have for our Spanish speakers that may be participating in this session. So We understand there's a sizable amount of Spanish speakers in this top end 285 project scope. So for that reason, we have a translator here to facilitate the meeting. If you're more comfortable asking questions in Spanish, make sure you follow the instructions on this slide to submit your question. Our translator is standing by to consult with our project subject matter experts and then provide answers in Spanish within the Q&A feature in Microsoft Teams Town Hall. So counting down here, got 6 more minutes to get your questions in, and this is not the last opportunity you have to engage with us and make sure your voice is heard on the project. You have until Monday, July 29th to comment on the preferred alternatives that we showcased on the various concept design role plots. Also the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and just as important are the potential proposed mitigation measures. So a lot of what really call it light reading, so some pretty heavy reading that shows how much thought has gone into potential impacts to this project and what Georgia DOT and its partners are proposing to do about it. So your feedback is going to go a long way in informing that plan on the top end as it continues to go along there. So another reminder for the save the dates on the upcoming sessions that we have. Have an in-person tomorrow during the middle of the day, kind of getting that lunch hour crowd. Then we have additional time periods for 2 more in-person sessions next week. Then you'll be hearing from me and some of these same subject matter experts in the virtual Teams Q&A town hall format one more time next week as well. So definitely trying to meet folks where they are, give you plenty of options to come in and learn more about this project. So I think with a few minutes left, I know I've been picking on Patrick a little bit here, but just getting back to the video part of it. And Patrick, let's we focused a good bit kind of on the start on the South Atlanta side, you know, coming up to 75. We talked through the 400 integration. Could we kind of go more towards heading towards, like, let's just say that Flowers Road, Peachtree Boulevard area as we get closer to 85? That may be of interest to some folks. I believe there's even a roundabout in that area.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent place to start. Kyle, if we back up the video just a smidge. Now what you see on the screen here is the Spaghetti Junction. So you've got, again, both express lanes on each side elevated to the outside. We are going to be adding additional 2 levels to Spaghetti Junction. So we'll have a couple of new noodles. But there'll be a connection to the I-85 hot lanes to the north. So as the camera pans in, we'll be able to zoom in on that as we move up that way. I-85 is going to need to be widened a little bit in order to accommodate this tie-in. So we've accounted for that in our environmental document as well. So there's a little bit of additional right-of-way required through here. But the express lanes will come down, tie directly into the hot lanes. And then as we head, let's see, camera will pan south here and we'll get a good view of the interchange as we head back south. But the existing express lanes that are on 85 will stay in operation after the project is constructed, and everything will be able to, users will be able to seamlessly drive from one system to the other without having to exit into the general purpose lanes. And here we are sort of at the northern end of that limit looking south on Pleasantdale Road. So the southbound direction of the express lanes will go up and over North Crest before splitting east and west. The camera's going to head towards the east here, towards the eastern terminus of the project, and we'll go over Chamblee Tucker in here in just a second. And then once again, just another sort of aerial shot of the future Spaghetti Junction. And then now the camera will head eastward still elevated on the outside. A couple straddle bents throughout here in order to sort of, reduce impacts through the area. So we're not completely taking everything along the frontage. Up and over Shanley Tucker. And then at this point, the project starts to decrease in elevation and head south. Yep. And then we'll tie into the proposed express lanes on the east side. And Kyle, here's your tie into the existing general purpose.
Awesome. Appreciate you kind of closing us out on the design front, showcasing some of those tie-ins for the top end express lanes. I know y'all worked really hard on that design. So got a few seconds left. Just want to remind everyone there's additional opportunities to comment through Monday, July 29th. Several more sessions that we have in person, one more virtual session. You see the little Kyle avatar there encouraging y'all to comment. So that's the most important thing with this project. We want to ensure that we hear from you to make sure we lay out this project as best we can in the future. So appreciate everyone joining us tonight as part of this public hearing open house series for the I-285 Top End Express Lanes project. Reminder that a recording of this event is going to be posted on the project website in the coming days. If you have any further questions or would like to leave additional feedback, visit that website or contact us by phone or email. So a big thanks to everyone that you saw on the screen, to those of you who participated, members of the public, our customers, the citizens, and also folks behind the scenes that made this a seamless event. So thanks again, and hope to see y'all again soon.